So good morning, everybody, and thank you all for taking the time to attend the second very exciting Fireside Chat of 2021. My name is Anthony O'Callaghan, and I'm currently a board member of IT Cork, who are a not-for-profit technology-focused organisation based here in the south of Ireland, and I'm also the CIO of the Carberry Group. I also wanted to give a massive thank you to our sponsors, KPMG, for these events since they started in 2020. And as always, throughout the event today, we'll be opening up for Q&A, right? So feel free to drop any of your questions in as we go, and we'll do our best to address them. So I wanted to start off today's event by introducing today's executive. So Sonny Liu is an entrepreneur, an engineer, an ex-CIO of Louis Vuitton with over 20 years experience working in technology. Now CEO of one of the most promising cryptocurrencies globally, which was recently ranked in the top 10 with a market cap of over 15 billion. So Sonny, I wanted to welcome you and thank you for giving your time to us this morning. I know it's been kind of coming in towards the end of your day, so thank you very much for attending today.
No problem, Singh. I'm very glad to be here, actually.
Ireland welcomes you, I can assure you. You have a massive following over here. So Sonny, look, I suppose kind of starting off, I have to admit I'm somewhat new to cryptocurrency. I've stayed out of it in the early days purely because I suppose I couldn't attach a real world use case to it. But I suppose now my eyes are wide open, and having spent about 20 years working in supply chain roles, and from a technology perspective, I can see the explosive opportunity for VeChain, but blockchain as a whole. So I'm very excited to get your perspective on this today, as I think you'll bring a different angle to the discussions we've had in the past, right? Because this is really a foundational disruptor, right? So, can I start by saying you've had a very interesting career, having spent a long time in what we might call traditional IT, and then making the leap into blockchain in early 2014, 2015, right? So would you mind taking some time to just kind of talk us through your career in the early days from kind of where you started in, as I said, traditional IT, kind of to where you've ended up today?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I'm always get this kind of question all the time. I always start with a joke like, how the guy selling bags by living to this cutting edge technology as a blockchain.
They weren't any bags, though. They weren't any bags. They were quite special bags.
Yes, actually, I really appreciate the experience in Louis Vuitton. Actually, I was I was a CIO, and also for Louis Vuitton is very let's say it's a very special journey to me because before I joined Louis Vuitton, I thought like, okay, it's just a retail. It's just people selling bags and buy bags. Why need a technology? But actually, Louis Vuitton is very, let's say, technology oriented. They also put in lots of efforts and resources in innovations. I could just give you an example. One of the biggest store in China, in Shanghai, when we opened up the store, guess like how many IT devices in that store? It's like about 200 devices, including iPhones, iPads, PCs, network devices, printers, everything. And also there are like dozens of different systems to support the business. So it's quite a interesting journey. And also it's a very interesting company, even like more than 150 years old, but still they're always looking for the innovation. And one of the events I had been through actually gave me the opportunity to know about Bitcoin is one of the CIO events, all of the CIOs all over the world gathering together like twice a year, 3 times a year. We talk about the future technology, and one of the topics is about the blockchain. And then I start to, take some time to study about that. I write a proposal to Louis Vuitton like in 2012 or 2013 maybe, to suggest them to take Bitcoin as a payment method, one of the alternative payment method, like what Tesla did recently. Well, unfortunately, they didn't take my advice. But for me, fortunately, I start to spend some time to go deeper about that. Actually, to me, I think one of the interesting thing is we're thinking. As a CIO job, CIO job is about making bridges between technology and the business. That's also the purpose of myself creating VeChain. We try to bridge technology value to business value. That's how we get started.
Yeah, and it's funny actually that you mentioned that, because I have watched some of your previous interviews, right, where you talk about, you know, the role of the CIO kind of sitting between the business and IT, and, you know, as you say, kind of bridging that gap, right? So, you know, back to when you would have approached Louis Vuitton, you know, with blockchain, which was very, very early, I suppose, back then, you know, trying to convince stakeholders to get on board, et cetera, right? You know, we'll have a lot of professionals, I suppose, leaving this event here today, going back into their business and understanding, you know, how can we potentially take something like VeChain and gain support internally, right? So, you know, how did you find that in Louis Vuitton? Did you find that you were kind of coming up against a brick wall, or was there a specific way of kind of getting over the barrier and getting them to open their eyes to this new technology? Because I suppose it's not just about blockchain, it's about new technology in general and getting support for it.
Okay, well, that's a very good question, actually. You know, I'm sure not only in Louis Vuitton, but in most of the enterprises, CIO job is one of the toughest job in the company, because basically you're hearing, or you have to talk in the two different languages. You have to talk to the technical people with, you know, technical language, but also you cannot talk the business people with the same one. You have to somehow to do some translations.
Yeah.
So as a bridge, it's very important to how to bring the consensus to them. So, but also during the early days, when I get into the blockchain space or crypto space, I find out there are maybe like 90% of people in that space are technical people only, and the very few people talk about, let's say, you know, a business or how to creating the use case. Usually, it's people just like, oh, I have a cool technical, you know, set, so I find out something really interesting and I create that or I invent that, but they didn't even think about like how to use that. But that's quite normal especially in the early stage of any other technologies. Yeah. But for myself, what I learned from the past, let's say, professional experiences, is the technology needs to serve the business, needs to bring the value to the business, and then could be continuously to develop itself, and also could attract more resources, more talents to add something on it. So VeChain, when I created VeChain, I set up some principle, is we got to do use case first. We got to do something different in this crypto space. Or let's say we find a differentiation point for VeChain. So our principle is we got to do use case. We got to believe use case drive product, and a product drive technology, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
So I think that's one of the competitive advantages of VeChain in the crypto space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just kind of thinking back to that jump from, you know, I suppose CIO in Louis Vuitton, you know, one of the largest brands in the world, right, into the CEO of a startup in you might say back then in quite an immature and volatile environment, right? I suppose, you know, how much courage did it take to kind of make that jump? You know, how did you know the timing was right, etc.?
Maybe this little. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, it takes time for sure. It takes time for sure. And even also, you know, China maybe has a different culture. I'm a Chinese people. Even I spent lots of time in Western. For example, in 2019, I flew over like 400,000 kilometers for a year. But I'm still, you know, I'm born as a Chinese. I got educated with the Chinese culture, and especially in the China, the parents, even you are grown up, the parents will put lots of influence on you. So when I bring this kind of decision to my parents, they were like silent for 5 minutes.
Is that good or bad? I'm not really sure.
Well, whatever, but in the end, they're all very supportive. They're all very supportive. It is a very, let's say, quite big decision. But when I made that kind of decision, I was just thinking like, okay, I'm 35 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I was 35 years old, and if I don't do this kind of bold move, when can I do this?
Yeah.
So, and for sure, I was fascinated about the blockchain technology itself. As a matter of fact, at that time, the blockchain was not mentioned that often in 2012 or 2013. Always talk about this coin, this cryptography, that cryptography, that kind of thing. But still, I got a hunch like this technology going to change the world, going to reshape the world a lot, like internet did in the last 30, 40 years. So I think, and then I find out, like I mentioned, the crypto space is full of people maybe speaking only one language, technical language, and that's my thing. I can speak both. So I feel this is my opportunity, and I just threw myself into that.
I think it's important as well to kind of have that background. As I said, I'm relatively new to the space, but I suppose when people are looking at various projects, it's around the people primarily, right, and the team that they wrap around them, rather than it just being about the technology, right, because it's about longevity, right. But I suppose, thinking about the company and the industry, right, when you look at traditional tech companies, I suppose it's relatively easy to see, how they transition from a startup into an enterprise company, right? So what fascinates me about crypto is, I suppose, when you correlate that, how do you correlate that or move from startup into enterprise? Is it about the number of partnerships you've made? Is it about market cap? What is it that, makes you kind of feel that you've made it as a company, or does that point never arrive?
Well, honestly, I still think we're still a startup. Even the entire crypto space is in a startup phase still. And I honestly, I didn't think through. I didn't expect like the crypto space could go that fast, that much. But generally speaking, I believe in blockchain technology, and the rest of the thing is just about the time and obstinate persistence. Keep doing what you believe, and just continue rolling.
And I suppose you started to allude to maybe my next question there. And sorry, you're just making me ask more questions, which is great. But once you do reach the top, I suppose you guys were top 10 quite close to top 10 very recently. Once you do reach that kind of top 10, top 20 in the space, what do you have to do to ensure you stay there? Is there any secret sauce to make sure you stay there and continue to build?
The cruelty of the answer to this question is there is no secret weapon, but just to keep going. Actually, crypto space is changing super fast, honestly, like maybe 3 times faster even than the internet. You have to keep 2 things in mind. I keep 2 things in mind in the past, and continue to do the same. Firstly, catching up the changes, and you have to be adaptive to those changes. You need to follow the changes, you to understand and know what's going on in the market, and be ready to, let's say, to make a decision what we're gonna do for those changes. And second is you gotta stick on what you believe in the first, and also keep going, keep doing that. For us, we believe the technology can bring the tremendous value to the real world, to the business world. So we just keep doing this.
Yeah, and I suppose kind of thinking about it like that, we've talked to a lot of founders in the past on these series, right? And some of them kind of share the same. Well, actually, it's an interesting mix, because some of them are very much of the belief early days in the company, it's around taking big risks, taking bullish risks to gain market share quickly, but others are then around building solid foundation and build a foundation that you can grow upon naturally over time, right? So I'm kind of getting a sense from you, you're kind of more of the latter. You build a solid foundation, you build a solid product, and you grow, but it's not growth for growth's sake by taking bullish risks, right? So what's your approach?
Well, honestly, I think it's always an let's say acquisite balance you have to master. Not only in the crypto space, especially in the crypto space, and not only in the early stage. It's always the balance, solid foundation and bold move or risky move you have to take. Especially in a, let's say, new era like crypto. Most of the time, no one can tell you which decision is like 100% right or 100% wrong. But I always like to think about 2 sides when I'm about to make a decision. firstly, the upside. Is this decision can deliver what you want? Can we make this, charge to some direction? Second, the downside. Is that risk coming from this decision something you can handle, something you cannot afford? That could lead to your final decision. So I think, and also in the entire crypto space, I think because like I mentioned, things moving super fast. People are always try to take, let's say, rather than solid foundation, but a little bit more than like risky, to go for different directions or different use cases or different, let's say, trends. It's quite normal to explore things, but for us, firstly, I believe anything will like for what we do, we need to find the differentiation point, or like different position other than the others. And secondly, we believe what we do is pretty solid, but it take longer time, take much longer time than the other, like for example, DeFi's or exchanges. It also take time, but maybe much quicker, much easier in the different stages. And what we do, like building the solid use cases and working for different enterprises, as a CIO, most of the enterprise, when they try to adopt the technology, are going to take longer time than what people in crypto space expect. So usually we always got the question in the community like, okay, you announce something, why there is no updates? Why there is no progress? Why there is no phase 2? Like you already have 2 months passed. You should have something going on, right? But in the traditional world, in the enterprise world, it's not like that. But we believe in this direction. We believe in the long-term vision. I think this is the right way. So we take time to do this. But still, even during this, let's say the past we stick on, we still need to make some risk moves as well. But just the balance maybe lean a little bit more to the solid foundations.
Yeah, and I think you'll see some. I mean, we've all come across some projects, right, in the last few years, right, that are around making a lot of noise, gaining market share, but under the hood, it's vaporware, right? So how much of those projects, how much are they damaging the industry, or do you think this is just something this is noise that will disappear over time as this industry kind of grows and grows and grows and gets more used to how to handle these vaporware projects, essentially, right? Do you see these disappearing over time, or do you see this kind of continuing and people following the noise, let's say?
Honestly, I think it's everything has the 2 blades. For sure, those, let's say, fishy projects or damaged projects could bring real damage to the people who invested them.
Yeah.
But it also have some, like, let's say, positive sides. It's kind of creating lots of, you could say, noise, but also I could say calling attentions to people around the world. Every time more people will, pay more attention to the crypto space or to the blockchain space, and also, let's say, even just a part of the people who could stay in the space and spend some time study about that and eventually become the builders to contribute to the blockchain development. That would be a good thing. Like myself, I was just like that. So, but for sure, those projects, I think with the development, with the time being, when the entire blockchain world evolves, like to the different level of the maturity, people will find more, or people will get more, will understand more, and then less and less people will get harmed or will get hurt by these kind of projects. Yeah. I would say it's just like a natural things development.
Yeah, and look, the sooner that comes, I think the better for everybody, right? But it's only natural. I mean, as you said, that it will evolve to that point as well. So I suppose kind of talking a bit more specifically about VeChain, our audience today is made up of a lot of your Stern supporters, which is awesome, and we saw a lot of engagement around Twitter, around you have a massive following there, which is fantastic, right? But there's also a very healthy mix of professionals from a supply chain and from an IT perspective, right? So as I said, look, I've worked in supply chain IT roles for a long time, right? And this application of blockchain is genuinely one of the strongest ones I've seen to date, and something I can really kind of get behind, right? So when we look at traditional supply chains, but also pushing into carbon trading, as I said, I'm the CIO of the Carberry Group. We're in agriculture. Agriculture is a massive aspect of our business. So carbon is a great use case from what I've seen, along with many others, right? So can you give us a little bit of background, to where this application came from, not just from a carbon perspective, but VeChain in general, but equally where you see this going in the next 3 to 5 years, right? 3 to 5 years is a long time, don't get me wrong, right?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, like everything else, it all starts from very simple one. Actually, the name of VeChain comes from a very simple 2 words, verification blockchain. So we call it VeChain. Because actually, when I try to think about how blockchain can really serve the business, and for sure we think about what is the benefits or unique features of blockchain technology, and it can verify things automatically, or you can make the verification much efficient or low cost, effective. So we start from there, and from the other side, I gotta try to think about any kind of resources or any kind of advantages I, as a CEO, as a co-founder, could bring to VeChain. And for sure, I was working in the luxury industries, so I start to look for help from my ex-coworkers and ex-mentors, and a great man just helped me. The previous global CEO of Givenchy, who is Mr. Philip Fortunato, opened the door for us. So I still remember the day I walked into his Paris office, and we had like 5 minutes reunion chit chat, and I start to explain what blockchain is to him. And 20 minutes later, he totally lost. He just like, oh, Sonny, I know you're a smart guy, but I couldn't get that.
Just 20 minutes?
Yeah, 20 minutes. Well, he's a global CEO. It's already very luxury to have 20 minutes of
course, yeah,
of his. But the good thing is he make a decision. He trusts myself, and he decided to be part of that kind of the first use case. So he just give me a green light to try in one product. I still remember the name of the product. It's called Infinity. It's very nice and very very beautiful bag. And at first the launch, and actually when we talk about that, they just plan to launch like in a few months. And then we start to work on this bag. We work on with his supply chain team to figure out what blockchain technology can really bring to them. And 3 years later, in 2019, we already cover like 100% of the leather goods. And if it's not like COVID-19 situation, we could expand it to ready-to-wear shoes, the other products very soon. So we start from there. But I believe blockchain technology can do much more than just a supply chain, or literally, let's say, to maybe different level, different angle of people's life, and including the sustainability or carbon emission reduction, which is a very hot topic right now in China. So what we actually do is, it's just like any other technologies, the value needs to be explored step by step in a continuous way. One of the mistakes we learn from the past when we're working with different enterprises, usually we talk to the executives because, such cutting edge technology, the CEO always very interesting to find out more, or to even be part of the discussion. But the executives usually were think like too big, like, oh, it could create an ecosystem. Lots of different participants can be part of that, and how are we going to drive that? But we also can see obvious challenges or barriers for this kind of the ecosystem to be built, because it's very easy to think about that. It's it's going to take like years, take ages. We learn from that, and we decide like, okay, every time we do like small step by step, and we bring a little value and with limitation of the scope of work to try, and don't impact too much to the business, but continue to grow especially when the enterprise see the value out of that, and they could invest more, they could contribute more. So our focus is just try to eventually we have a goal, like like an ecosystem. And the good thing is we can see the prototype of the ecosystem since 2018 or 2019, when we built the carbon ecosystem with several different companies, including BYD, the largest EV company in China. Even we spent a little more we expect, but now we're diving into more with them, like not only EV company, not only EVs, like not only vehicles, but maybe we can go into like batteries directly, because batteries can be used in EV, but also can be used in the multiple different scenarios, even like some manufacturing machines to generate the carbon emission reductions. So my point is, when we go to, let's say, blockchain applications, if we think too big, if we plan too big, you never get finished that.
Yeah.
But if you do like step by step, I think that's the right way to do.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes a ton of sense, even in the whole, like your tweet actually a few weeks ago about just that simple VeCarbon kind of tweet, right? It really kind of got me thinking. I suppose if you kind of look at I'm sure we got tens of thousands of people thinking as well, right? But if you kind of look at the whole sustainability space, as you say, I mean, you can't listen to a show at the moment without sustainability popping up every 30 minutes, right?
Right.
And do you see kind of VeCarbon as without revealing too many of your kind of trade secrets or plans, right? But do you see this as a way of let's say trading carbon going forward, as companies are buying carbon credits at the moment and they're selling carbon credits, like et cetera? But do you see this being a potential application for VeChain or VeCarbon?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the ultimate, let's say, goal for VeCarbon. Even we just get started.
Yeah.
And VeChain is playing, let's say, a very important role to providing, the blockchain technology as an infrastructure platform for that. Mm-hmm. And thanks for the national strategy of China right now. China just put carbon neutrality into the next 5 years national plan. And you know how China goes. When the president point the direction, and everybody just go that way with tremendous resources and efforts to go that way. And I think it's the right decision for the president to make, because carbon emission, or let's say go bigger, like a sustainable development goals, is not only for China, it's actually for everybody else. Yeah. And blockchain is born to be, let's say, supporting technology for that. Because right now, if we look at the current, let's say, situation of carbon emission or any SDGs, we can see in the past years, people are talking about that too much, but with little action in place. The challenge is how we can motivate or incentivize individuals to do this kind of contribution, like on your daily basis, you drive EV other than driving a fossil car, or you drink a coffee with your mug, not with a paper cup, that kind of thing. So how we can collect those activities or digitalize those activities, and also verify those activities in time, and also make that kind of activity to be treatable, to be, let's say, to be able to be incentivized in time, and then people are really can be educated to neutralize, let's say, a behavior or habits, like I can say the word on a daily basis, that kind of way. So that's how VeCarbon going to build. Going to, let's say, we define several different stages, let's say, so far. For sure, again, it's going to take years, take time to build that. But we are very clear what we're going to do. At least in China, usually you go to the first phase is about to design. You need to find a use case, find a scenario, and then you writing about a proposal like, okay, we can find a way to digitalize this scenario and collecting the carbon emission credits or carbon emission contributions from the individual people. And also we can make it verifiable and also, treatable in time, like even with a fraction amount of proof of work. And then, you need to go to the government, you go to the authority, or go to the reputable, certification body to certify or to approve whatever you try to do is totally scientific and align with whatever the CER procedure or Paris Agreement even. And then you collect those data and you incentivize individuals. You find the sponsor, that's the part to building the entire ecosystem, to sponsor whatever you do. And eventually to complete the big circle, the ecosystem circle to make this happen. And actually it's more than just carbon. For example, one of the use cases I know from DNV in Europe, they're doing similar ecosystem for clean water. They find a sponsor to incentivize people or entity who try to collect the plastic waste from the ocean. And those people when they get economic incentive, they will be really going forward to do more, that kind of thing.
And I think that's the interesting thing as well when you kind of look at carbon. I mean, as you said there, right, there's a lot of people kind of doing this stuff on a daily basis, right, but they're not reaping the benefits, right? I mean, they've kind of positive carbon credit generation that you would just have to find a way to kind of certify that and then a way to trade on it as well, right? But I think there's just so many opportunities out there to kind of get behind this. I think it's largely around kind of educating people in terms of how to do it, really, right? And this is really I think this industry, it's so hot at the moment. It's not a buzz topic anymore. It's very real. Companies or countries, as you said, have signed up to this. By 2030, 2040, 2050. This is a first mover advantage here, right? And I think companies that move first will take full advantage of it, right? So it's great to hear that you guys are doing so much in the space, right? I think this will be explosive.
Actually the prototype has been built, and actually the pitch I used to present it to, let's say, authorities is it's not a PPT solution anymore.
And I suppose you mentioned DNV there as one example, right? So VeChain is obviously smashing when you kind of look at the partnerships that you've built, right? Some of the biggest names. I love that map that you guys kind of put out, and it gets updated every time I see it, right? With all the names under the who's who of industry. You have the Salesforces, you have the BMWs, etc., right? So in order to help our audience, right? I mean, you touched on it there a second ago. Once a use case has been identified within your company, how do you go and start the proof of concept with VeChain? I mean, how do you turn that from an idea into a POC and into an enterprise grade platform? I mean, what is the easiest path to making that happen?
Well, like I mentioned, firstly, you got to start from small, especially for the POC. You need to create something can generate the obvious value, and to make, like I mentioned several times in the past, you got to make blockchain value to be visible and touchable. You don't just show a bunch of green codes in a green screen, in a black screen, to say like how cool my technology is. You got to generate the real business value for that. And second point is you got to make POC delivery or POC build very quick. You cannot spend like months to build a POC. usually when you bring some ideas to your boss or to the executives in the company, they usually get excited about this technology and the possible value coming from this technology. But then you spend maybe 9 months or 12 months to build a POC, and maybe your managers or directors just forgot about what you said like 9 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that happens very often. Not just in blockchain. It happens very often.
Exactly. So so that's why we focus on building or providing the tool sets or infrastructure platforms with bunch adequate tools and services to enable any enterprise to build a POC very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. I can give an example. I remember when maybe I don't know exact time, but I read about the news like starting from 2017 or 18, IBM built a full safety platform for Walmart, but it took like 9 months or more than 9 months, something like that, and millions of dollars has been spent. But in 2019, when we start with PwC to try to build a similar platform for Walmart China, it only took 3 months, and actually 2 months for PwC to make full safety consultancy job, and 1 month to deliver the first POC for Walmart China, because we have predefined or pre-built the sets of infrastructure to make it happen. And also, we think from enterprise point of view, not from technical only. So we try to make more user-friendly to, let's say, to enterprise developers to build like very quickly.
And I think as well that's certainly the pace that companies need to be moving at these days, right? The days of waiting 2, 3, 4 years for an enterprise system to be fully implemented, they're gone. I mean, by the time they're implemented, they're out of date, right? So that pace of 2 to 3 months that you're seeing, I mean, that's the pace that companies need to move at, right? Because I suppose technology is moving so fast. By the time you implement it, sometimes after a year, it's out of date already, and you got to move again, right? So you mentioned, I suppose around the product and the platform as well, right? But I suppose it's not enough to just build a great platform. You also got to build a great community of developers and a community of supporters, et cetera, right? So how do you do this and make sure that it has longevity? As I said, you have a massive following of we've a lot of people on here today that are stern followers, right? But how do you make sure that has longevity and you continue to have that community in place?
That's
obviously besides being a very likable guy, right? I mean, that's a given for you, right?
Yes, it's actually a very challenging topic, and honestly, I don't know. I even don't know what we have been doing. It's like 100% correct or 100% right, because no one tell you like what to do, and we just keep trying. So I think there are 2 ways to think about that. One way we think delivering the value to like transforming technology value to the business value, you gotta work with those professional people, working with the enterprise people. But also we have a great community. Honestly, they have been very supportive. They have been doing lots of extra jobs to bring VeChain to the whole world. So how we're going to make the balance is one thing. To be honest, we have been trying to master this balance, or to manage the balance very delicate way. But generally speaking, we wanted to provide more handy tools, convenient tools or services to enable those, let's say, we call community builders to build the different platforms. I think one of the misunderstanding from the whole world or from the entire community is, one of the key delivering or offering from VeChain is toolchain as a PaaS and a BaaS platform to build the blockchain applications. But the misunderstanding is toolchain is only for enterprise users. Actually, it's not. We also wanted to make toolchain be more for individual developers, for community developers. But to be honest, there are some improvements for our platform. For example, when we deliver the BaaS module, we call blockchain as a service module. So that means you can build whatever application you want, but just calling the BaaS service to interact with the blockchain, to use your smart contracts or use predefined smart contracts as we build in the gateway, and you can interact with the blockchain instantly to get the results you want. But when we start to build that, we think too technical, let's say. We make the APIs, we make the technical documents, and we thought like, okay, you guys should be able to build, but actually it's still too technical. We want to make it, actually one of my mission recently, one of my goals is to make the BaaS product more like a mature product. So we're gonna redesign the new user journey for individual developers, for community developers, could use a new BaaS platform, so they are able to just log in the website and few clicks, few steps, and then you start to connecting your application to the blockchain, to the VeChain blockchain very easily. So this is just one of the example, and also for sure we have launched various programs such as a grant program. We start with $1 million to encourage and support the community developers to come and build the meaningful, valuable applications. But in the end of the day, our goal, VeChain's goal, is to create valuable transactions. Anyone can build valuable transactions or valuable applications, and then we wanted to support.
Yeah, and I love that idea around it. Let's say moving outside of just being, a tool for technical folks, right? We see it in the rest of the enterprise space that there's a lot of kind of movement in the whole citizen development movement as well, and trying to put those tools into the hands of folks that are not deep technically as well, right? That they can make progress, right? So I think it's awesome to kind of hear that that's where you guys are kind of going as well, right? Because I'm sure that'll ramp up the adoption as well, right? So I suppose kind of changing tackle a little bit here, right? Obviously kind of following kind of crypto markets in the last 3 weeks or so, there's been a huge amount of volatility. We went on a massive run. Now there seems to be a bit of a blip. I mean, do you see this as something that's temporary, something that's more fundamental? Do you think it's overheated, et cetera? What's your kind of take on what's happening in the last week or so as well in the market?
Well, honestly, I have been to this space longer enough to experience several this kind of let's say events. Starting from 2012 and 2013, the market always like this. But I would say fundamentally, it doesn't change the core nature of the blockchain or the crypto space or the direction even. But just like every other things, things will go this kind of up and down, but the next higher will always higher than the last one, this kind of way to go up. And actually, if you look, let's say, look at the events specifically, it kind of linked to some new policy or let's say reinforced or enhanced the policy from unfortunately from China, like the miners, especially Bitcoin miners, were banned, and those mining farms have been shutting down. But before, the hash rate of the entire China represents like roughly 30% of the whole Bitcoin hash rate. So it kind of creating this kind of let's say event, but I would say it's pretty normal. I would say it doesn't change anything about the Bitcoin itself. It doesn't change anything about the blockchain itself. As a matter of fact, Chinese government is very supportive of about the blockchain applications. I think this is the right way to go. For sure, crypto is one of the use case of blockchain technology, but not the only one.
Absolutely.
And I think what Chinese government is trying to do is to, like we discussed before, try to eliminate or let's say minimize the damage from those noisy projects or from those noise, right? But to encourage people, to encourage especially blockchain startup to do more, let's say, valuable applications or to serve more business values. That's just the path which China should select.
Yeah.
I give an example. Recently, we had a very interesting project called VTrust, is application to help public facilities like communities, hotels, restaurants, to deal with the COVID-19 situation, to implement the new policy or new instruction, answering to or responding to the different level of severity of the COVID-19 situation in the different city. And we start from Suzhou, and there is already like more than 100 sites has been connecting to the platform, and the government liked that. Actually, government sponsored that.
Yeah.
One of the biggest, municipal government like Suzhou really sponsored that, make that happen. They push this application to the different sites on a daily basis. Yeah, so
that's amazing. It's kind of back to this whole real world use cases. It's not around the lofty goals. It's around how you can kind of iterate on it, right? And well, there's a healthy mix out there of I suppose the Bitcoin enthusiasts, and they'll claim that this is the end of traditional finance, etc. There's some that'll say that this is not the end of traditional finance, and then there's a coexist model as well, right? What's your kind of take on that? I mean, do you think it's the end of traditional finance? Do you think it's a coexist model, or do you think it's just continue business as usual?
No, I don't think it's the end. I would say it's just like everything else. It's going to be coexisted, and for quite a long time. For example, here days we still have a fax machine in the office, right? Ironically, like in 1995 or 1990s, whatever. Some really big guy just made it for internet as a fax machine.
Yeah.
But even nowadays, fax machines still in office, still have some purpose or have some position to be there. So I would say finance could be more complicated than just one technical products. It's far more complicated than everything else. It's kind of sitting at the top of the food chain. It's kind of impact everybody's life. Even people don't really know about that. So I would say, and also the regulation is I still believe regulation is necessary. I'm not that kind of a totally go decentralized, this kind of way. I don't believe that. So I would say in quite a long time, the centralized finance or the traditional finance will coexist with, let's say, blockchain finance or crypto finance. Maybe crypto finance just getting started, like a very small portion of that, and I'm sure it's getting bigger and bigger portion of that. But still, I don't think like one thing will kill another, that kind of thing.
No, I think it's a fair point. It's not one or the other, right? And I think it's important not to stay just too much left or too much right. That it has to be a kind of coexist model for the immediate future, anyway. Let's say, right? And I suppose you kind of took us back through your early career, as kind of CIO, now to CEO of VeChain. You're still very young, right? So you've achieved quite a lot in the last 20 years, right? So obviously a long career ahead of you, right? What's next on your bucket list? I mean, what should we expect from Sunny in the years ahead?
Well, honestly, I don't think I have any bucket list, to be honest. But let me put this way. If I accomplish something, and I always can give myself another goal, another purpose. So it's kind of like I was provided by some professionals. I got the result like I'm kind of ultimate climber. I always looking for another goal, always looking for another thing. But so far, I really dedicate myself into VeChain. I wanted to create, let's say, I want to make VeChain to be a public blockchain can bring most value to the real world, to serve most real business in the world, can really eventually change the whole world.
That's fantastic. And look, you're clearly making an impact on that. So Sonny, look, I think that kind of brings us towards the end of our session, right? So look, I really wanted to thank you so much. Look, I know your time is incredibly valuable. I wanted to thank you for your time this morning. You know, I also wanted to thank, you know, the attendees. As I said, we have a massive following here from you personally and from, you know, the local markets here in Ireland as well. I also wanted to thank our sponsors, KPMG, you know, who've been with us since the start of this series, right? But Sonny, look, again, thank you. I wish you the best. I wish VeChain the best for the future, right? And I'll certainly be closely following this well into the future, right? So thank you and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. It's genuinely a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Sonny. Thank you all.
Thank you.